going to call the meeting to order of the Board of Civil Authority and open the floor for nominations for chair.
Nominate Wendy for chair.
Second.
I'll accept that.
So Wendy Savory's been nominated for the position of chair. Are there any other nominations? If none, then I declare the nominations closed. Can I get a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Wendy is our new chair.
Well, thank you all for your nominations and confidence. Now, we will be looking for nominations for vice chair from the group assembled.
Go ahead.
Nomination from Bruce for Kathy Lizader. Kathy, you would accept that?
I accept.
All right. Gary, a second or no?
Yes.
Okay. Any other nominations for vice chair? I'll close those nominations then, and all those in favor of Kathy as vice chair of the Board of Civil Authority, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Sounds like the motion carries. Congratulations. All right, now we are on agenda additions and deletions.
I've had a request to move public comment number 5 down to after the challenge voter section.
Well, that request can be pushed forward by the group assembled, yes. Is there any opposition to moving public comment to after the challenge voter?
Can we leave the floor open to public comment also after the challenge vote?
You're suggesting adding another public comment, having public comment before and after?
It's nothing like great debate.
I'm amenable to that. I would think that that this board would probably want to hear public comment before.
Prior to it, that's my feeling.
Yes.
And then if, rather
just
than
want
just
to
move it
speak
to the other side, if we're going to choose to vote it, move it to the other side, I'd like to be able to have it on both ends.
Okay. I mean, I think that makes sense to me as well. So we are not going to move it per se, but we're going to add public comment again after the challenge voter and before other business.
Yep.
Is this board in agreement with that addition? Public comment again after? All right then, let's move to the fourth item unless there are other additions or deletions. We're looking now at our minutes from March 23rd, 2022. We have copies there. Give you a minute to look over them again, and then I would entertain a motion to approve those minutes as presented. Thank you, Bruce. Is there a second? Okay, thank you. Any further discussion from the board about these minutes? I believe we have enough people present that were also present at the meeting to be able to push the question. All right, so those in favor of approval of the minutes from March 23rd, 2022, please say aye.
Aye.
And those abstaining?
Karen, for that?
Did all the abstentions? And did you abstain
Yep.
or no? Did you abstain or no?
Was I supposed to?
Yes.
Yes.
In theory, yes, because you were not at the meeting, so.
Right.
Well, I expected.
Well, that's true, you were there as public, I forgot that, but on the other side. All right, it sounds like they have been approved by consensus, so we are going to move on now to public comment. We're a few minutes ahead of schedule, so we can pause for a moment. And then, so the members of the public are aware, we have agreed to hear from public comment before our item of challenge voter, and we will hear from public again afterwards, if you would like to speak again after whatever the board decides to do. So, we will open it to public comment. Mr. Burdette. You could also state your name, it just so happens I know it.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ken Fredette from Wallingford here. Good evening, everybody. I'm a little stuffy, but I have tested negative for COVID. A little head thing. I'm not contagious. I believe most people here know the history of what's going on here, but for a brief overview, Bruce Martin was elected to the Mill River Board in March of 21. He moved to Rutland in October of 21. In March of 22, at the request of a group of Wallingford residents, the Wallingford Board of Civil Authorities sent a letter to Mr. Morton to challenge his residency. Mr. Morton responded that he was living in Rutland, but planned to make improvements to a remote cabin he owns at 2126 Wallingford Pond Road, and moved there as his permanent residence in the fall of 22, and hence he was allowed to stay on the Wallingford checklist. He did not move back to Wallingford in the fall of last year, and now says he plans to make said improvements to the cabin and move in this fall. He has written that he was able to live in the cabin from April to November of 22 because of having access to water and electricity from the other end of his property, but could not make upgrades due to delays from his solar contractor. As of this past Monday, February 13th, 2023, he has not applied for any permits that would be necessary to change the status of the structure from seasonal to residential. Sorry. Enough is enough. Please remove Mr. Morton from the Wallingford checklist until such time as he relocates here, and send official notice that this has been done to the Mill River School Board Chair, Superintendent, and District Clerk. I will be glad to discuss this further or answer any questions. Thank you.
Yes, if you would just state your name as well.
Charles Gottlieb. I live at 640 Haven Hill Road in Wallingford. I read about this on Front Porch Forum, and, you know, I don't particularly care whether he serves on the school board or not. I mean, I think we ought to have somebody who lives full-time in town do that. That's my opinion. You know, one of his comments was he gets his car serviced at Shaw's. I mean, that's all well and good. I get mine done in Manchester, but I'm not on their board, nor do I vote there. You know, poor Dave Potter lost by 9 votes, then it was 8, then it was 7, then it was 6. We've got people on our checklist that shouldn't be there. In years past, I've come to vote, and may I have your name? Yes, Charles Gottlieb. Well, which one are you? So I'm not the one that's been dead for 5 years, nor am I the one that moved out of town for 4 years. So it appears to me that we have, you know, a little bit of a problem with our checklist. And it's probably not the easiest job in the world, but I'd like to get it straightened out, and I don't understand why it takes over a year. I don't get that. It's not clear to me. Anybody think this is a good idea that this guy serves on the school board? I mean, I don't know. Maybe you do. Get it adjudicated and I'll live with it. I've been in town for 60 years. That doesn't entitle me to anything over somebody who's been here for a week. My point is, this is the second time I've appeared before a governing body, so I'm not a rabble-rouser, I'm not a troublemaker. The first time was I got bit by a dog twice in 1 week. So just do something, right or wrong, that's my point.
Tony Masick. I'm not sure if Mr. Morton's place that he says he lives in during the summer months is the same one that he has listed for rental for his people who have campers at his camp, but I think it is, so I'm not sure if he lives there with them while he's advertising that he rents it out or not. It isn't clear from on the Night Eagle website, but I think that that's the case.
Holding a little more space in case there's any other members of the public who would like to speak to the board. Yes, you could just state your name.
I just want to stand in support to what Ken is suggesting. I have been in Wallingford now for 3.5 years, but I also own property in Rutland City. I don't vote in Rutland City. I don't serve on any boards of Rutland City. Yes, I have property, but that doesn't make me a member of the Rutland City community. I'm a Wallingford resident, and I think that that's really important to me, and it seems like it's probably important to all of us that we make sure that we're represented by people who actually live here. So thank you, Ken, for bringing that up, and thank you for the opportunity to just stand in support of it.
All right, it would appear that there's no other public comment at this time, is that correct? So I am listening to members of this board. If someone would care to make a motion in regards to the actual call to the meeting, which by request, right, from a taxpayer came to us. So if you have your copy of our agenda, go past the minutes, and then you will see the request dated January 26, 2023. That's what has brought us here this evening. Before we can enter into any further discussion around this matter, we do need to have a motion made and seconded.
Make a motion to discuss it.
Okay, a motion to discuss
The challenge,
okay.
requested, and the request.
A motion to discuss the challenge of the request for residency. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second that.
All right, so we are motioning to discuss this, but there is no motion on the table concerning how to proceed, just to make that clear to everyone. All right? Open for discussion from the board.
I've always been a firm believer that anybody who serves on any board in a town, whether it be a recreation board, whatever, any board in the town, that they would be a person that did live in town. I think one of the main reasons why you vote for somebody to run for a representative in your town is because that person lives there, you have the ability to see that person, you have the ability to talk to that person when you're out and about, and that person can represent your feelings. I don't feel that to have somebody on the board that's representing me, and I've got to look them up on the back street of Rutland if I want to go and talk to them, is really the way I want to see things happen. So I strongly agree with Mr. Fredette's opinion of not being a resident, and that he should be taken off the voter checklist. That's my feeling.
Not a member of our board.
Could your board members identify themselves when they speak?
Yeah. Gary Fredette.
I thought it was you.
Did you get my name?
No. What is your name?
Chairman Wendy Savery, S-A-V-E-R-Y. Yes, Nan?
Nan Dugan. I have been reading up on this because I want to understand what the controversy was about, and I know that Mr. Morton serves on the school board and is also on our voter checklist. I assume he was on this past year's voter checklist in Wallingford. And I was just looking at two things. So last year he was challenged, and he wrote his letter responding to the challenge. And just one part, he says, "My moving to Rutland was not done surreptitiously. In fact, my friends know that I am living in Rutland." This was in 2021. And this is from the state of Vermont statutes, which says, if the voter confirms in writing that the voter has changed his or her residence to a place outside the area covered by the checklist, the Board of Civil Authority shall remove the voter's name from the checklist. So it seems pretty clear to me that whatever his intention is for the future, he is a resident of Rutland right now.
Thank you.
Vice Chair Kathleen Zabel. I would like to say that when Mr. Morton got elected, he was living as a renter in Rutland at that time, which confirmed his residency in the town.
In Wallingford?
In Wallingford, sorry.
That's okay.
In Wallingford. As Nan has just stated, it was in writing that he moved to Rutland. So he is, that sort of establishes that his residency is no longer here. And because of that, I agree with Mr. Fredette's proposal of determination of taking him off the Wallingford checklist at this time because he is not a resident of Wallingford at this time.
Bruce and Shane, it does say that in statutes, but it also states that, if I could read it here. If their intent is to maintain a principal dwelling in the town indefinitely and to return there if temporarily absent, then they're considered a resident. From everything I can read in the statutes, I think we have the ability to issue a challenge letter to him again. But I don't see in the statutes where this board has the authority to just remove him. I know he voted here in the fall.
I would just say with the evidence we have in front of us, it looks to me like he no longer meets the requirement of residency in this town and should be taken off our voter checklist with the evidence that we have in front of us.
And I also see what Bruce said, I know what Bruce is saying, but,
Yeah.
so do we say, if he says, well, in the next 25 years, I plan on moving back to Wallingford, do we keep him on for 25 years because he says he's gonna move back to Wallingford? I don't buy into that. But sure, I'd say take him off the checklist. When he moves back in and he's a permanent resident in Wallingford, all he's gotta do is come down and register in the town of Wallingford. I don't understand what the big deal is. He's not living in Wallingford. He's not a resident of Wallingford. He shouldn't be voting in Wallingford, and he shouldn't be telling how well we're spending our taxpayers' dollars. That's my feeling.
Kate Getz, to Gary's point, I would, I can see maybe a, temporary period was understandable to begin with. Mr. Morton did specify a date at which time he had anticipated returning to the community when upgrades were completed. But this Supreme Court case, Vermont Supreme Court case that this board was supplied with, includes the language, a nebulous or floating intention of returning at some future time is an insufficient tie to maintain one's domicile upon physically relocating to another place with an intention of remaining there for an indefinite time as a fixed place of abode. I just feel like there's precedent here where, you can't just leave this open-ended and expect to, remain on a checklist.
And to be perfectly honest with you, I know the location very well. I'm up in that location a lot. I find it very hard to believe that Mr. Morton is going to be able to turn that into a full-time residency in any time in the near future. That's as remote a location as you can possibly get. He doesn't receive mail there. He can't possibly receive mail there. He can't have a phone there because there's no phone lines there. I just find it hard to believe that he could even be living in that area in the next couple of years. So, like I said, very simple, take him off the list, let him reapply.
Wendy, Maureen Duche. It's a little confusing with his letter that he sent, because in the letter he states he lives in Rutland, but his challenge letter that he signed that came back to Julie states he lives in Wallingford, and it has a Wallingford address. So I don't want anybody serving on my boards or help telling me how to spend, property tax money or school board money that doesn't live in my town. But do we have the legal right when we don't have a definitive answer where he actually is?
Well, that is a question that we could debate for a long time. That was our initial response to the initial challenge over a year ago, and that was his response to the challenge at that time. So, not really answering your question other than to point out that it's possible that this board could determine that he is in fact not residing here, and if he provides proof otherwise. My understanding from reading through the statutes is that he can be returned to the checklist in the event that our decision is not found to be, if we were to make that decision to remove and it was found to be unsubstantiated, or he could provide evidence otherwise. That's my understanding of the statutes, which are somewhat nebulous, but I also read the court case that Kate just referred to, which does get at some of the gray area here and sort of establishes the point that now we're 12 months after the initial challenge and we still don't see evidence of the place in East Wallingford being where he's actually residing. At least I don't see that evidence. It hasn't been presented by anyone here. And I'm going to recuse myself from a comment, I think. When you look at the response to the challenge, though, there's a paragraph in there that's interesting. Because when you live in a town, you know more than one person in that town. Other discussion from the board, comments? We're gonna need a motion to kind of close our debate.
May I make a motion? That we remove Bruce Morton from...
We need to close our discussion first.
I'll make a motion to close the discussion.
Second?
All those in favor of ending the discussion around the issue? Okay.
I would like to make a motion that we remove Bruce Morton from the Wallingford voter rolls until such time as he moves back to Wallingford.
Second?
Motion has been made, motion has been seconded. Is there more discussion around this before a vote? Are there comments from the members of the board?
Just got one question. He signed his former residency challenge under the penalty of perjury.
Correct.
So if he is swearing that he lives, oh, my name is Mark Kessier, by the way, sorry. He is swearing under oath that he lives in the town of Wallingford.
He did on that date, yes.
He did on, right. So my question is, if this is under perjury, do we have the authority to remove him from the voter list, or should this go to the state of Vermont or further review, to the state's attorney or someone, because it is now a legal issue if this is not his residence?
That, I don't believe, would be under the jurisdiction of this board to pursue.
I agree, but is it under our jurisdiction to take him off the voter list if he signed this and says, I am a resident, under penalty of perjury? Does that not put it back under the state of Vermont?
Well, in these statutes, it says that if the voter confirms in writing that he has changed his or her residence to a place outside the area covered by the checklist, and in his letter, he says, I am now living in Rutland. So the perjury thing, that maybe is not our purview, but removing him from the checklist is in fact our responsibility, because it says the Board of Civil Authority shall remove the voter's name.
I just don't think that we have the authority to do that when he's stated in the challenge letter that he lives in town.
Well, he didn't say he lived in town.
I think he needs to be.
He did in the challenge letter.
On the challenge letter, it says legal address.
Right.
2126 Wallingford Pond Road.
Correct.
And he has confirmed that he bought that piece of property in June of 2021, or whenever that was. He bought this property, but as other people have said, owning property doesn't mean you live there. And then he says here, I live in Rutland. So I'm not sure, this is what he wrote to the Board of Civil Authority.
At the same time that he signed the challenge letter.
Well,
We have two different, that's where it's...
Well, it would seem that where our responsibility lies is if he has claimed he lives somewhere else now, it is our responsibility. It is the Board of Civil Authority shall remove the voters from the checklist. So I'm not sure why we would leave him on when he has said, I am living in Rutland.
And we could take him off and he could prove if at some point in time that he doesn't live in Wallingford.
Yes, that is-
Put it on him, it's not on us. And put it on him to prove that he lives in Wallingford. He's proved to us so far that he doesn't live in Wallingford.
And he's given reasons why he can't live in Wallingford at this time.
Right.
Didn't he have a motion on the floor to vote?
There's a motion on the floor. We've had some discussion. I can move the question if there's no further debate. Want to make sure that I completely state the motion correctly before we vote, though, so I'm going to rely on my secretary.
Nan made the motion to remove Bruce Morton from the Wallingford checklist until such time as he moves back to Wallingford. Seconded by Kathy.
So that is the motion to remove Bruce Morton from the voter checklist in Wallingford until such a time as he establishes, what was it? please?
Moves back to Wallingford.
Moves back to Wallingford and makes that his residency. That's the motion on the floor. Those in favor of that motion, please say aye.
Aye.
And I am going to need a show of hands because I just feel like we're. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Those opposed? So the motion has carried. 6 in favor of the removal, 4 opposed. That will be the direction, so I believe we invite you to write a letter, is that correct? According to the statute, you will let him know that we are removing him, and you'll also notify the Secretary of State. That sound right to you? That's what I read in the statutes.
And also, could I add that they also notify the Mill River School Board?
So we have reached the point in the agenda where we are again inviting public comment.
There was no other letter sent, right? Challenge letter. You would have had to do that tonight. You were working off one challenge letter.
Not another challenge letter, yes.
Okay. So essentially, we're challenging, or we're questioning Bruce's integrity by not allowing him to respond to another challenge letter tonight. I think it's a little premature. I think at least you should give him the benefit of the doubt. Undoubtedly, he did live here. I guess he lived here some of the time last year in the camp.
He does a camp, he does a summer camp up there every year.
So, I mean, he did have a residency here. I don't think you're giving him a fair shake. I think you need to do another challenge letter. You have to let him respond. You're cutting him off, you're just throwing him out. That's just my point.
I submit that he has responded when nothing has changed since his response last March 25th. Everything is the same. He has not applied for any permits to do anything.
How do you, I mean, what gives you...
Excuse
why
me?
did you go look for the permits?
It's public records.
Why didn't you ask him? He may have circumstances.
He isn't forthcoming with information. Do you see him sitting here defending himself? No. I'd just like to clarify that the laws are modeled. These laws are like, oh, they're subject for interpretation. I have talked to Will Senning and emailed him. He's the head of the Elections Division at the Secretary of State's office in Vermont. And he says all states in the United States have these laws in place, modeled after federal law to prevent abuse of boards like this, just taking people off the checklist and preventing them from voting. Not the case here. He can vote in Rutland if he likes. We aren't denying him his right to vote. Nothing has changed since he responded to the letter last year. And as soon as he comes back to Wallingford, he's certainly welcome to ask to get back on the checklist again. It's as simple as that. I don't know why this is so hard. I was on the school board for 20 years. I've seen many people have to move out of town and they just stepped off the board. Simple.
How is he going to be purged from the school board?
Pardon me?
How are you planning on purging him from the school board?
Under, I think it's Title 24-961, if elected official moves out of town, then his seat shall be declared vacant.
Okay.
That's up to the Mill River Board. That's not up to this board.
Thank
This
you
board is just the checklist.
both for your comments. Are there further comments from the public? Yes.
Joyce Carter, I would highly recommend
that you do a roll call and have that listed in your minutes because you might need it in the future.
We can do that. We can just pause for a moment if we want. So those of us on this board, not the chair, who did not vote, who voted, do you have all the ayes? Julie? Do you remember? We can do it as a roll call. Maureen?
No.
Bruce?
No.
Tony?
No.
Buster?
Yes.
Yes. Gary?
Yes.
Lindsay, say?
Yes.
Gary said yes.
No.
Yes.
Yes.
Other public comment? Then I will entertain a motion from this board to adjourn unless, oh, we have other business. The election worker schedule, and I will just remind some of you who are new to the board, maybe one of you, maybe two. So one of the things that we do annually is take a look at the entire voter checklist, and that was done before the elections this past fall.
No, we do it,
In the odd years.
So
All right,
it'll
so
be
it's
done
coming
this
up.
September. But I need workers on March 11th, and I have the sign-up sheet here for the election. If anybody wants to sign up to work, man,
Yeah, well,
Pass it around.
I know you will. Or are you gonna be gone?
I don't know that, and I should be able to do it, but.
That's it.
No, us doing that, we could adjourn. I mean, the other business is coming around, so if you're willing to stay long enough to put your name on the sign up, all right, a motion to adjourn from Bruce.
I second.
Those in favor? We've adjourned.